When disaster strikes, will you be ready?
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the monster hurricane and its deadly impact already.
When all hope is gone, will the government be there for you? If you're looking for ways to take your prepping to the next level, then you've come to the right place. Broadcasting from a secure and well-prepared location, it's time for Prepping 2.0. And now, please welcome authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher, Prepping 2.0. So excited to have you here with us this week. We are on episode 85.
Actually, that's 86.
We have a returning guest. We've had a lot of returning guests lately, but you know what? Times have changed since they were on the last time. But first, before we go into any of that, I want to introduce my co-host on this show and my co-host in life. That's become our thing, Glenn Tate. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning. Good morning. Super excited to have Sam Culper on. He's been on at least once before that I can remember. He might have been on twice. He's kind of a standby because he's quite honestly, the prepper intel guy. He has a background in intelligence in the military and in a agency of some kind. And he really teaches people, preppers, about intelligence. And I know you're saying, oh, geez, intelligence, what are we going to learn how to read satellite maps or something? No, it's common sense, practical stuff. So anyway, he's on and he's going to have a lot of great things, and with the riots and things going on, it's more important than ever. And here's the thing, guys, you got the 7th AR-15 you bought. What you really need to do is learn about your area, learn about the basics of intelligence. You know, a lot of guys are going to die with 7 AR-15s lying around because they had no idea who was living next to them. Anyway, I'm getting into the show too much. We're also going to have in the after show for Patreon supporters questions from our Patreon supporters for Sam. These are amazing. We always get so much more out of a show from the Patreon questions. The stuff people come up with is amazing, and Sam is going to give some amazing answers. By the way, Patreon supporters, it's $2 a month up to $20 a month. It pays the bills for the radio production and all of that other stuff, and you can learn more prepping2-0.com. Speaking of Patreon, Shelby, you have some good news for folks.
I have some good news for folks. So coming up, this is June-ish. We always pre-record shows. So yeah, this show's going to be in June sometime. But get ready to our Patreons. And if you're not a Patreon, here is a big motivator for you to think about doing it. Every year, we're in our second year, this is just going to get bigger and bigger every year. We send out a thank you goodie bag to our Patreons, and we have gathered everything now. We are getting ourselves geared up to send them out in July, if I recall.
Early July, yes.
Early July. But Patreon, seriously, they're chomping at the bit. Glenn will send out an email at the end of June. Patreons, reply to that email. Do not send that email now because it gets lost in Glenn's email box. Don't send it now. Reply to that email.
With your address.
And then that's when we start fulfillment. And it'll be fun.
Yeah,
so,
we're complete nerds. We sit around and we go, oh, you know what would be cool? Oh, for the $10 tier, let's put this in. Oh, that's awesome. Anyway, we're complete nerds, but we love doing it.
There's a couple of our friends you could ask. They've sat in our living room and we've had that conversation. We're kind of excited because we have some really cool stuff this year, which brings us to the next point. For all of our listeners, you know, if you've looked at us and seen us on social media or whatever, you know we wear these facial masks. They're called Hoo-Rags. The brand name is Hoo-Rag. And we ran out of those when there was all this mandates to wear a mask in public.
Shelby, do they screen out viruses?
They don't, but they sure send a great message. And so I put out there back in March or April, hey, you know, if you're going to wear a mask, I recommend this. Boom, gone. They sold out. And of course, the company that makes them had to go on, you know, lockdown. We now have
Hoo-Rags.
Facial
coverings.
That link is live on our page. So if you go to Prepping 2.0, go to shop, you'll see them there. Order them, and they send a message. They send a very clear message. You'll have across your face our iconic "I Miss America" message, and they're there. And they've upgraded the quality of them. They're a little bit more comfortable. You don't have the seam across your face anymore. So,
and one thing I can tell you, you're saying, why do I need like this? Let me tell you something. The conversations that ensue. Shelby and I will go into Costco with our "I Miss America" face mask coverings. And we get into some of the most amazing conversations. All these people that you would look at and say, they're probably not one of us. The thumbs up and everything, it's really gratifying. I know that sounds crazy, but it is really, really gratifying. Shelby, tell folks about Friends and Affiliates.
Yep. Again, if you go over to our website, all of these things, everything Prepping 2.0 is on our website, but there's a tab that says Friends and Affiliates, and we keep updating that, and we've made a really huge point to update that with some of our recent guests and some of the cool things and coupon codes and things like that they give to us to pass on to you. Forward Observer, who we're going to talk about here today, is going to be on there as well.
Yeah.
So as we talk about that today, you might be thinking about clicking over there.
Sam will give you details. There's a special package deal going on here for Prepping 2.0 listeners, and we're very grateful of that. But it's on the Friends and Affiliates page, and that's the place to be.
And these are all people and products and things that we make a point to develop a relationship with, try their products, all of that. So this isn't just, hey, if you want to, these are the things that we believe in. So
Vetted.
Yep, there you go.
Folks. And speaking of that, Friends and Affiliates, in a sense, we have sponsors. We have great sponsors. We mention them now. The ads play in the middle of the show, and that is EMP Shield. They make a device that hardens or protects whatever it's wired into from the pulse effect of an EMP. Numana, they make freeze-dried food in large sort of family-sized portions, and it lasts 25 years and counting. Cati Armor, C-A-T-I Armor, steel body armor, good entry-level stuff. It's not the lightest thing in the world, but you're probably not going on 12-mile hikes in the Afghanistan 10,000-foot elevation area, so it's probably just fine for you, and it's affordable. By the way, body armor, cheat. Give yourself an unfair advantage. The other side does. Anyway, Backwoods Home.
Well, with what's happening in our world today, body armor seems like a good idea.
Even if it's heavy, steel body armor works pretty well in vehicles, which is probably where you'll be when the Swiss cheesing starts. Backwoods Home is a magazine. As the name implies, it's about prepping and self-reliance. Great magazine, great folks. So I wanted to, and that's it. Now we're going to get into the stuff that people want to hear, which is Sam. I wanted to introduce Sam. He is a friend of ours. I've been listening to his show. I've been a reader of his book, SHTF Intelligence Manual, for a long, long time. He's the dude. And it's very rare, Shelby, in the prepping community for us to be able to say, there's one guy who is the guy on this particular topic. And Sam is it.
Sam is the guy, yes.
Sam is it. And so before we start, I want to just say forwardobserver.com is where you can find out all about this. And I wanted to get that out there first. I wanted to say hello and good morning to Sam, and then ask him to tell us about what's going to be on the Friends and Affiliates page when people click on the Forward Observer link. So good morning, Sam.
Hey, good morning, Glenn and Shelby. How are y'all doing?
Oh, fabulous. Fabulous here, far from the cities. We'll get into that in a moment. Tell folks about the Area Intel course and the book and all of that.
Yeah, well, the Area Intelligence course is an online course that teaches you essentially how to do your area study. Now, I'm willing to be an open book, and I believe we're going to talk lots about area study. But if you want a self-paced, kind of guided, methodical approach that you can complete at your own pace in the Area Intelligence course, is definitely what you want. And then also, we are doing a kind of a special or bonus package for Prepping 2.0 listeners. And that is when you buy the Area Intelligence course, you'll also get my book, SHTF Intelligence. It's 190 pages long, roughly. And that is essentially the textbook. I mean, that is the SHTF Intelligence Manual, and we'll send that to you for free. And then you'll also get another course we did. It's smaller. This is only 3 hours long, and it's the Intel Essentials course. And that really goes into basic intelligence gathering, basic analysis. Essentially, between that and the book, you're going to be able to build kind of a neighborhood intelligence effort, or an SHTF intelligence effort from those two things. Plus, you'll be able to do your area study, which is really going to accelerate this path to building area intelligence and building a local intelligence network so that we can stay ahead of the curve of what's coming.
Exactly. And we say it all the time. Prepping 2.0 is that next level in prepping. It's the bullets, beans, and Band-Aids is Prepping 1.0. Prepping 2.0 involves things like community, intelligence, and some other things, comms, beefing up your water and night vision. But anyway, intelligence is that next level, because it's not just you and your family that's going to be dealing with this. You're going to need community. And how do you know who your community is? How do you keep in touch with your community? All of that intel is critical for this. But before we get into that, we have a drawing, a prize that one of our Patreons is going to win.
And we announced this last week.
Yeah, we announced this last week, and we announced that Sam was going to be drawing the number. This is a 4 terabyte, that's a lot, big computer thing, a 4 terabyte external hard drive with all of the topographical maps for the United States of America. Those really good USGS maps, the National Geographic ones. Well, they're USGS, and it's how you know where stuff is and how to get places. Sam, I'm going to ask you the softest ball question in the history of radio and podcast interviews. Sam, as an intelligence expert, are maps important?
Yeah, actually, maps are incredibly useful. Let me know what my number is, because I'm going to draw that number for the topo map. But yeah, that sounds like a great product. I would love to have one. But topo maps especially are incredibly important. Any kind of imagery, because the problem you run into is line of sight. And there's trees, there's houses, or buildings, or mountains. And what topo maps really allow us to do is have a bird's eye view of what's beyond our line of sight. And we can make some inferences. We can make some logical conclusions based on terrain features or based on imagery. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot that these kinds of products provide us that, we can't. No intelligence network is going to be able to provide us the kind of information a topo map will.
Exactly. And the other cool thing is that these are hard copies. Now, they're on a hard drive, but you would then select the ones you want and either print them out or have a separate drive and just view them. Here's my point. You don't need to connect to the internet for these topo maps. If you think Google Maps is going to be a really good idea when stuff's broken down, number one, maps can be hacked. We know about the Chinese and others that would, if, for example, in Iraq, I think Sam told me about this actually, they would show bridges where there weren't any, and they would show no bridges where there were bridges. So that's a problem. And second of all, you're not going to be connecting to the internet. And third of all, there's ways of tracking you when you're connected to the internet. So Google Maps or whatever it is, just put that out of your mind. That's prepping 1.0 stuff. That's great for finding out where your cousin lives when you're in Omaha and you're going to visit him or something. It's not good for trying to survive, the civil unrest that's coming. So they are hard copy, and they could be paper, but they're going to be on your computer and no internet required. Partisan Labs are the folks that make them. They're good guys. They're affiliated with Amron. They're very good guys. And they make these things. It takes 20 hours to download all the data onto one of these things. And they sit there and they do it. And then they ship one off to you. It's about $150. Here's how this all started. I bought one. And then I looked at it and I said, oh my goodness, this is so cool. And then Sam was coming on the show and I was like, oh, Sam's going to love this. And then I called them and said, hey, do you guys want to give one away to our Patreons? And they said, heck yeah. So it's not like they're paying me or anything. This is like, I'm excited to let folks know about it. So Sam, drum roll, please. Would you pick a number between 1 and 529?
Sure. Drum roll. How about 525?
525. Okay, let me quickly look. We scrambled all of the Patreons and assigned them a number. 525 is Mike Ecker. Ecker. Mike Ecker is going to win a Partisan Labs 4 terabyte topo map. And Mike, I'll send you an email and we'll work all that out. Anyway, cool. Well, thank you. And thanks also, Sam, for letting folks know the importance of real maps, not online maps. Well, we have some questions for you. And these are the questions that come up all the time. These are questions people ask us. And we wanted to ask Sam. So I believe Shelby's going to start off with number 1.
So first of all, I love that we're doing this topic right now because of the political unrest that we're seeing right now. And I'm seeing a lot of people say area study. So softball, easy question for you, Sam. Is intelligence James Bond stuff, or can every prepper do it?
Well, not only can every prepper do this kind of intelligence, but every prepper should be doing this kind of intelligence. In the Army, we had this saying, every soldier is a sensor. So every soldier had this obligation, this duty to pass along information of intelligence value. And when we look at a prepper group or neighborhood watch or any other type of community or defense-based organization, we have the same thing, because no one is as smart as everyone. And the person who may have the least skill, this guy's not a medic, this guy's not a gun runner, he's not a rifleman, we'll see. This individual may actually be very well suited for intelligence gathering. So, yes, at a certain level, everyone has to be at least passively involved. And, this is not, really to answer the question, the James Bond stuff is fictional.
Yeah.
What we really need to do is begin producing ground intelligence for our local areas. And yes, every individual can do this.
Very cool.
Yeah, and so what are some examples? And look at what's going on now with all the riots and everything. What are some examples of the intelligence preppers can do? Because I think that word intelligence just, has so many things loaded into it about satellites and spy gear and everything. What are we talking about? What are some concrete examples of the preppers' use of intelligence? What do they get out of it?
Sure. Well, here's a really great example. Some skills that I've taught, and actually some things we did back in 2014 or 15, the Ferguson riots. We battle tracked the Ferguson riots. So we were using some very basic tools that anyone can use to scrape social media, and we were tracking obviously Twitter and Facebook, and photographs were, reporters, local news, local radio communications during the Ferguson riots, and we battle tracked, and we were able to produce intelligence or information or knowledge pretty regularly, 10 to 15 minutes before it actually hit the news. So if you're in a situation, you're counting on the news or whatever to provide you information. There's some level of decay there, right? Intelligence has a shelf life. And what happened 15 minutes ago and is being reported right now this is my huge complaint about, websites like Broadcastify. It's a great website. It's very great theory, great idea in practice. And it's certainly better than nothing. But a lot of those feeds, Broadcastify allows you to listen into, police and emergency services frequencies. That may be 15 minutes old. A lot of times they'll do that. They'll put a 15-minute delay on this stuff. So you may think you're getting breaking, information, and you're not. So, that's probably one example, given the recent, rioting. I should say probably the current protests and rioting is battle tracking. And that's something that anyone can do. And actually that's something that everyone can play a role in. And the more people we have doing it, the more spread out, the more thorough we can be. And so that's just a really good example of what individuals can be doing. And that really is just the start.
So on that note, that's a great way to transition to our next question, Sam. So we've talked about the riots. So what are some examples, and we only have a couple minutes, so we may cut you off real quick. What are some examples of intel in disasters too?
And I think we're talking about the Fox Company situation, because that is such a great example.
And I want people to hear this so that they can see what's capable and what's in the current environment.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so back in 2018 or so, we started kind of a volunteer organization, very informal, called Fox Company, and those were students of mine. Either they took physical classes or they took the online classes, and we started helping out a number of organizations. One of those was Cajun Navy Relief. They are the Cajuns and the rednecks who take their boats to floodwaters. They did in Houston. 2018 was Hurricane Florence in North Carolina. And these people, they had limited communications. They obviously didn't have the internet. A lot of times these search and rescue teams, they didn't have time to pull over and say, okay, well, let's take 15 minutes and figure this out. So what they were able to do is ask us questions, and us operating as the virtual ACE, we were able to answer their questions in near real time, provide them with intelligence so that they could more effectively do their job and save more people. And this is what Fox Company has done in numerous situations. We've helped out with, child and sex trafficking or
Wow.
counter efforts, and hurricanes and disasters. So, with a little bit of knowledge and training, you can make a huge impact to people trying to do very good things that government just is not doing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's so
that
cool.
is such a good example.
And again, that just ties into what this political unrest that's going
Yeah.
on these days. I just think this is so cool. Go ahead.
Well, and Sam, you were mentioning about not relying on the news, and I'll say this, government can't do it all. It's entirely possible that the local news stations are maybe not going to report things that you need to know. Like there's a bunch of really bad people marching down, a street towards your neighborhood. And maybe the local news doesn't want to acknowledge that there are any bad people. Maybe they tell you the peaceful protests are coming, but you can see the smoke rising in the horizon from the peaceful protests. Let's see here. We have 3 minutes, so we'll start this question off, and then we'll probably have to interrupt you. And then at the break, we'll come back on the second side of the break, and you can answer these. What are the top 3 things preppers can do to have strong intel preps?
Great question. So
You can adjust the number. You can make up any number you want. So
People don't know, Sam. It's okay.
yeah.
Well, I'm trying to prioritize the top 3. So number 1 is humans, people, human intelligence, human. And by training the people in our neighborhood watch or our community security teams or our preparedness groups, just doing some very basic training, we're force multiplying our intelligence network, or we were actually building an intelligence network and force multiplying our capabilities. So, in a grid down situation, all these scanners and social media network analysis and scraping tools and all these things, they're going to be virtually useless
Yeah.
in most instances. And so we're going to have to rely on people. So number 1 is start identifying your intelligence requirements, your collection requirements. Start recruiting and training people in your groups or join a group. And then really start facilitating the flow of information, because ultimately that's what's going to put us on the bleeding edge of an emergency, is access to information, because we're all limited by our line of sight and our ability to hear. And all of a sudden we start having multiple nodes now providing us with multiple streams of information. And we go from 0 to 100 very quickly. So that's number 1. Recruit and train people. Number 2, I like police scanners are great in most areas where, there's more and more law enforcement agencies are moving to encrypted communications. So they are in general, scanners can become less valuable. But for most areas where that has not happened yet, you have to get a police scanner, because
You do. And
the
Sam,
information that's breaking is going to be over a police scanner.
Sam, hate to
And
interrupt
number
you.
3,
Hate to interrupt
Go
you,
ahead,
Sam.
yeah.
It always happens with the first break. We're going to go into a break now, and when we come back, Sam's going to finish his thoughts on police scanners. We're just getting started, you guys. Good stuff. So stick around for more Sam Culper from Forward Observer.
We'll be right back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate right after this.
PrepperNet, where preppers unite. Looking to meet other like-minded people in your area? Looking to start your own prepper group? Already have a group? Join PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet has gathered the biggest names in the industry to help unite preppers everywhere. Join John Jacob Schmidt, Scott Hunt, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Glenn Tate, Shelby Gallagher, Charlie Hogwood, Samuel Culper, Survivor Jane, Rick Austin, Franklin Horton, Ryan Mitchell, and Brian Duff. Our team is united. Check us out at PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet, where preppers unite. PrepperNet.com.
Prepping 2.0 is about that next level of prepping. One of the key 2.0 items to have is bulletproof body armor plates. I used to think body armor was too tactical for a regular guy like me, but it isn't. Give yourself, your family, and your team an unfair advantage when bullets are flying. Body armor used to be expensive and hard to get. Not anymore. KD Armor, and that stands for Come and Take It, makes solid and affordable body armor for normal people. Get body armor while you can. The clowns in Congress are trying to prohibit future sales. KD Armor is the place to get it. CATI Armor.com. Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount when you use the coupon code GRANT.
When the grid goes down, darkness will descend fast. Used to be there was nothing you could do about an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, or CME, coronal mass ejection. Now you can protect your electronics, protect your family, thanks to EMP Shield. EMP Shield invented a simple-to-install device that prevents whatever's connected to it from frying in an EMP or CME, and it costs just a few $100s. EMP Shield has been tested by independent laboratories and passed muster with the government, which has ordered lots of them. Google EMP Shield and see for yourself. And save some money. Get a $50 discount per device. Go to prepping2-0.com. Click on the Friends and Affiliates page, then click on the EMP Shield logo. At checkout, use coupon code PREPPING2.0. It's all one word.
Shelby Gallagher here. We found that you need to layer your food preps.
Yeah, this is Glenn Tate here. A lot of times the hardest part of layering is the long-term foods. We love Numana foods, which have a 25-year shelf life and are non-GMO. Also, organic meals are available.
Numana comes in family-style portions and in bulk. This is not backpacking food. It's family meals that last for at least 25 years. The perfect freeze-dried part of your food layering.
You can get a sample of Numana meals for $19.95 and see for yourself. You will be amazed.
Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount by entering the code PREP.
Go to Numana.com or click the link on the Prepping 2.0 website.
Give it a try. Numana.com. That is Numanna.com.
And we're back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher, and we have Sam Culper on our show today, and we had to cut him off like we always have to do, and he was just getting into the importance of police scanners. So, Sam, continue your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so police scanners are great. I highly recommend the Uniden Home Patrol 2. It's become very popular and for a lot of prepper groups.
We have one.
For a number of reasons, it's ease of use and portability. You can put a GPS antenna on there, and now you have a mobile police scanner that updates the frequencies wherever you go. So that's a pretty incredible capability. And then, the third thing I'd say is an area study.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that I recommend every individual do it for their own neighborhood. And then a prepper group can also come together and do it for the entire county or their area, or their part of the county, wherever they live. And really what that allows us to do is begin to anticipate what could go wrong. Mm-hmm. And, we're always going to suffer from a lack of time, lack of people, a lack of resources. And what the area study allows us to do is start to break down our operating environment so we can figure out what's more likely and what's less likely to go wrong. And once we figure out the things that can go wrong, then we can start to be very deliberate in how we prepare for those threats or those conditions or those events that we feel confident are going to happen, or certainly recognize the high likelihood of it happening. And so really, in terms of being able to anticipate future events and be very specific with how we prepare, you have to do an area study. You absolutely have to. I mean, in the military, in intelligence operations, there is some level of area study work being conducted, whether that's intelligence preparation of the battlefield or a number of other processes that are used in other places. We have to know the area. We have to know what's in it, what our assets and liabilities are in the area. So, won't belabor the point anymore. You got to do an area study.
Yeah, and what's involved in an area study? Is this hard? Is this like a 2-year master's course on some obscure place in the world, or is this figuring out what's going on in your neighborhood, in your town, in your region?
Great question. I always tell people the area study is as thorough as you want to make it, and you'll get out of it what you put into it. So what I recommend, for people just starting out is to start taking notes on the 6 layers of our operating environment. So our operating environment are all the people, places, and things and conditions in our area, in our area of operations. So that may be your neighborhood or maybe your retreat location. If you do have a bug out location, you'll probably want to do an area study for both, your full-time residents and your bug out location. And the 6 layers of your operating environment include, for people who are taking notes, number 1, the physical terrain. So we have to have topo maps and imagery. We have to have that bird's eye view of the things that surround us. Make sure that imagery is as recent as possible. Number 2 is the human terrain. Yeah. Who are the people who live around us? It's a lot more than just demographics like, race and age and those types of things. Behavior, when we talk about the human terrain, what we're really talking about, or more importantly what we're talking about, is attitudes and behaviors. How do people view law enforcement? How do people view government? How do people view each other? How do the people who surround you view you? And, if we can't start to answer that question, then we're going to be behind the curve when it comes to deal with these people, or when it comes time to deal with these people during an emergency. And the human terrain is a little more than that. Also, I'm looking for key leaders or key figures, key influencers in the area. One thing I try to tell people is, if I want to start a neighborhood watch, I could go to door. I probably have to go door to door. As a matter of fact, I have gone door to door. It's a great thing to do, to start getting people's contact information and, kind of recruiting them into this whole neighborhood watch thing. But another thing I could do is find an influencer. So if there's a very well-respected business person or well-respected, they're few and far between, but a well-respected politician or some community leader, I can go to that individual. And if I can recruit him to tell people, hey, we have to get prepared, then, he can make a statement on, or she can make a statement and turn on a lot more people in a lot less time than I could to the idea of preparedness or self-sufficiency or resiliency. So if we can get these influencers on board to then influence a lot more people, we're then force multiplying our effort. And then after the human terrain, we have critical infrastructure, what keeps your world spinning, what could break in your area, where are these facilities located, how resilient are they. After critical infrastructure, we have politics and governance. What do your local political leaders believe? What they believe about the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment? What are they planning for in terms of emergencies? What are they liable to do during an emergency? Here's my big complaint in general is we spend so much time on selecting the right gear.
Yeah.
And all this, gear is important and all this stuff. But, if we don't understand how our local leaders and local decision makers are going to react during an emergency, then we're not really prepared to deal with those things. So we really have to stay ahead of the curve. We have to be able to anticipate accurately what these people are going to do. After that, after politics and governance, hang on, let me roll through this real quick. So we have the physical terrain, human terrain, critical infrastructure, politics and governance. After that is military, law enforcement, and security. So the National Guard is obviously playing a big role. Let's figure out where our local armories are. How might they impact us? Same thing for military, or I should say for military. Next is law enforcement. Who are our local sheriffs or our local law enforcement individuals? What are their policies? What are their beliefs on the Second Amendment? And then local security. After these or during these emergencies, we often see security contracts going out for public places or large corporations. It's pretty easy to get on your state's website, like your state Secretary of State website, and do an entity search if you can. Not all states have that stuff online, but just do a search for security, and then find all these security firms that are on record as being a business in your area, and just start taking notes. After that, we have the sixth and final layer of our operating environment is economics and finance. What are the economic drivers? Who are the major employers? What types of industries do you have? And how by keeping track of how local business is doing. I mean, look, that's really a leading indicator for a whole lot of things like crime and, and unrest and a number of other things. So those are the 6 layers of our operating environment. And if we're not examining each of these layers, if we're not looking for clues as to how these layers are going to look during an emergency or how they're going to impact us, then we're not really prepared.
Exactly. And I have a quick example from our own world here, me and Shelby out here in rural America, on the human terrain. And by just mentioning these 2 things, everyone will go, oh, yeah, now I understand why this is important. Human terrain. Number 1, we pretty quickly figured out that there is what appears to be a meth house, kind of not really near us, but in a place that we're going to have to deal with to go to and fro, basically. And that's important to know about. And now we're kind of either verifying or I don't know, excluding that as a possibility.
We keep an eye on activity and watch.
We're just not going to flip out and start killing people. Is my point. We're going to be.
Well, Glenn might, but I won't.
We're going to actually have our facts straight, so we're aware of it. And here's the other one. You mentioned local leaders. There's a guy in our little area named Jerry. He's a cool guy. And the parties are always at his house, and he knows everybody, and he's about 70 years old and is kind of a wise guy, not like in the mob sense, but in the sense of wisdom. And guess what? He's an influencer. And guess what? We maintain very good relationship with the influencer. Spotting the meth house and spotting the Jerry are what you're talking about, among other things, with the human terrain. So I want to give folks examples, of our world, and you can see why it's important.
Well, and the next question we have for you is along these lines, but I want to kind of add to what Glenn said. So our next question for you is, how does a prepper do an area study? So I'm going to kind of answer that, and then that you kind of expand on it too, Sam, is that Glenn and I here in our little niche of the world, we have figured out all of the things that you have said. We know, the area study that we've done it, and we've watched people. And I have to say this too, in all of this that's happening in our world right now, whether you live deep in the heart of a city, or you live in a rural place, all of this stuff that's happening with all the riots that are happening right now, these people, these influencers, the politicians, the sheriffs, the police, they bubble up and they give their opinion, and then you can add that to your area study. Am I right? We've had our local sheriff bubble up and say something. It's like, that's good to know. We also know, and I've talked about this before, we know, and luckily our local paper printed it, all the people that have been freed from the local jail and their sentences commuted because of COVID. Well, I know their name now, and we have
last known
address and all of that. So these are all and we've also shared this intel amongst our tribe, and we've had a whole nother show on developing our tribe. We are looking for those people. We're looking for those policies. We're looking for a local official to say something so that we can gauge responses. And it's been really good. We also know Glenn over here knows where all the repeaters are. We know who runs the water system, the electrical system. We know the major employers, and we know what they're doing, and we know the funders of local politics. That's another good one too. I think when you see people trying to sway local politics, they do that with their money, not with their opinions in a paper. They do it with where they put their money. So the question, and so I'm just putting that out there, and I'm doing it somewhat vaguely because I don't want people to know where I'm at. How does a prepper do an area study? You kind of, that might have been your outline that you just did, but if there's anything you want to add to that, Sam, what are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, analyzing the 6 layers of the operating environment, that's kind of the guts of the area study. What would probably also be helpful for people to know is kind of the general process. All collection in intelligence, all intelligence gathering is based on collection requirements. And what we want to do is keep a list of these collection requirements. And how we build this list is by identifying our intelligence gaps. So what are the things that we don't know but need to know? So we talked about that, that meth house, the meth lab in the area. Well, one intelligence gap you might have is what is the larger facilitation network look like? Where does this meth lab, where do they get their supplies? Who is involved in that process? who delivers it, or how do they distribute it, and where are they distributing it. So these things these intelligence gaps may be things that you're interested in answering. And if that's the case, then we need to write these down. And these questions become our collection requirements. And then we can take a collection requirement, and then we can sit down and say, well, who in the community would be able to answer this question? Or how, what intelligence gathering method might we use? And I recommend that people really develop 4 intelligence gathering methods. Number 1 is human intelligence, what people know. There's that, we'll keep it very basic, but human intelligence. Next is open source intelligence. One really great way to keep track of local politics is through Twitter. So, we can start a new Twitter account or a new Facebook account and follow local politicians, because a lot of times they will comment on things that
yes.
It's not a public statement. It's not a press release. It's their opinion on something very specific. So that's a great way to do it. So human intelligence, open source intelligence. Next is signals intelligence. There's people are communicating via radio frequencies. How can we listen in on that? And then number 4 is imagery intelligence, which really kind of goes back to maps and imagery in the geospatial realm of intelligence. So those are the 4 things that you need to develop. And once you have your collection requirements, once you have these pieces of information that we need to go out and collect, then we can start to lean on these 4 methods of intelligence gathering in order to satisfy those requirements. And then once we have the information, once we have satisfied those requirements, we can add that to our area study. And this is like collecting pieces of a puzzle. If I have 3 or 4 pieces, I may not really understand what this puzzle picture is. And then all of a sudden, I start getting more and more puzzle pieces from members of the community. And now all of a sudden, we're putting this puzzle together. And I have a very clear picture of where this is leading, or a very clear picture of what's going on. And so if we are not very deliberate with our list of knowns and unknowns, then there's a very good chance that we are not going to continue to answer the unknowns. And just like everything, building a house, there's a method involved. And we have to have a method for intelligence. Otherwise, we're going to be skipping parts of this process. So I know everyone wants to rush out and collect, but actually the first phase of the intelligence cycle is determining what you know, determining what you don't know. And so I highly encourage everyone, as you're doing this area study, or as you're trying to piece together what you already know about your operating environment, start writing down these questions, the things that you need to know that you don't know. Because when we get to the phase 2 of the intelligence cycle, which is collection, now we actually know what to collect. And we can be very efficient, because we're always going to have limits on resources and time and people. So we have to be very ruthlessly efficient with what we do and how we do it. So no, that's at a very entry level. That's my best advice for how to begin this area study.
And your area study course and all the materials you have, and I highly recommend it, is basically providing people with an overview and a framework, and I dare say, these are my words, not yours. Tell me what you think, Sam. Sort of a checklist. I mean, a framework, an organizational thing, so nobody has to go out and invent this on their own, because you've done this. And so talk a little bit about the course and how that helps people do all the things you just mentioned.
Sure. Well, yeah, it is a framework. There's this really great book called The Checklist Manifesto.
Yeah.
And one of the takeaways that I was really interested in this book is back before surgeons had checklists, there was very high rates of medical malpractice, because they would leave gauze in or leave a tool or whatever in their patients. And the book talks about when checklists were adopted universally by hospitals and surgeons, medical malpractice went down by, I think it was something like 70%.
Wow.
And so, we also have intelligence malpractice. And so we do need a checklist. And the area study, the area intelligence course is not exactly a checklist. I mean, there are checklists in there. I do provide the framework and the methodology. And for a lot of people who are very new to intelligence, a lot of this stuff, like identifying intelligence gaps, generating requirements, is not going to come naturally to some people. And, some people's brains are just not geared toward that. They have other strengths. And so really what I try to provide is the most accelerated pace that you can build like a 50 or 80% area study to get you started. And really what I want to do is provide people enough steps where they can start getting something down on paper and then they can actually start understanding their operating environment. So really the area intelligence course it's an accelerated path to building an area study. And yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I provide kind of step-by-step, hey, here are the things that we need to look at. Here are the things that we need to do. I offer you a collection of a list of collection requirements also to get you started. And it's not going to cover everything because I can't possibly, we'd have thousands of requirements. But what I do provide is, probably 10 or 15, maybe up to 20 collection requirements for every layer of your operating environment. So as you read through these, hopefully it spurs some additional thought and you can start generating your own intelligence requirement. And then once you do that, now you're actually building your area study. You're actually building out what I would say is the single most important tool for preparedness. Yeah. Because by doing this area study and taking this course, you're going to realize very specifically exactly the things that you need to be preparing for on a local level. And let me just add this one thing. You're talking about EMP or financial collapse, and that's all well and good. I'm concerned about some of those things too. But if I can't anticipate the local effect of an EMP, and I'm not just saying, gang warfare and pandemonium. If I can't be very specific with my expectations, I'm probably not prepared for some of these eventualities or for some of these events or conditions. And that's something that the area study really allows us to do, is really zone in on exactly the things that we need to be preparing for on a local level.
And here's a great example. And you brought this up earlier about people and intelligence is way more important than gear. This just occurred to me. There are people I know that will spend all their time and money, quite honestly, getting a titanium recoil spring for their pistol that shaves 1,000th of a second off the cycling time of their slide. And they didn't know that the guy living next to them is, I don't know, an MS-13 member or a sex offender. Guess what's more important, guys? It's not even close.
Well, and what you say is true. If you ever just go hang out on Instagram in the gun world, oh my gosh.
Well, and speaking of Instagram, Sam was knocking it out of the park on some great memes. And it was stuff like, hey, who's got, 7 AR-15s? Everyone raises their hand. Who's done an area study? Nobody. And as far as area studies go, I'll tell you, among our friends in the Prepper and Patriot community, everyone either says I've done an area study or I need to. And here's what I've never heard from anybody ever. Emails, social media, anything. I've never heard anyone go, yeah, I did an area study and it was really a waste of time. I didn't learn anything. It's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite.
Actually, most people think. So I'm going to say this, and we only have a few minutes before we need to go in the after show, and I'm going to throw you a question from left field. Sam, has all of the, and I keep going back to it because, and this is why I keep going back to it, all of these things that are happening around us now, these nationwide city riots, and the disparity of the reaction from police forces in certain areas compared to other areas. My example being here in Washington, and this is happening all over. In Seattle, that we have a wussified police force and mayor who is, wussifying the police force so that they're going out there battling riots with their hands tied behind their back. And then you have in the rural communities, local citizens basically guarding gun stores and Walmarts, which is great. And so as I watch that happen, and Glenn and I have long conversations about it, we go, that's good to know. We've seen some things happening here locally in our town going, that's good to know. And what it's providing, honestly, all of this unrest, there's a silver lining out of it. It's providing area study intel. What are your thoughts on that? And that's a huge question. And you have 3 minutes. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really liking, like y'all, I'm really liking the this kind of expanded trend of a focus on local security. I love seeing the guys, kitted up, protecting their local businesses, because that's community, that's tribe. I think the next step for them to do is Shelby, like you kind of said, is not just to show up, but show up and be well informed.
Yes.
Because, the more well informed we are, the easier our decision-making process becomes, because we have all the information that we need. I won't say all, but we have a good portion of the information we need to make well-informed decisions. So, really for these kinds of people, the first, or if you live in a neighborhood like this, the first thing I would do is, during these riots, is identify the organizations and the people, the drivers of this conflict. What organizations do you have, maybe on the left and the right, who are driving or responding to this unrest? Number one. Number two, figure out how they communicate. Is it through social media or through, a Telegram app, or, Telegram or Signal or something like that? And maybe we can't get access to that, but we can certainly try. And then, be able to monitor communications so that we are, we have all these blind spots. And what we have to start doing is just chipping away at these blind spots so that we have, we have more information, we'll have timely information, and ultimately so that we can react better and faster. Mm-hmm. That's really what intelligence allows us to do in a real time, kind of tactical situation, is give us early warning or threat intelligence so we can better understand the situation. But I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And Sam, we have about 45 seconds. I just wanted to make a quick point, and then we'll go to the after show for Patreons, where we're going to answer Patreon questions and I think talk more about these community self-defense forces that are springing up. One thing, guys, we've been talking about basically the threats out there. I've been talking about meth houses and sex offenders and stuff like that. Here's another thing to be wary of and to be gathering intelligence on, and that is there are a lot of people, especially in rural areas, that want to be warlords. They're conservative. They're like us. They're like, yeah, let's go do this. You need to keep an eye on who they are, because they could lead people astray, and that's just as bad as MS-13 coming over to your house. So I wanted to make that point, and we only have about 5 or 10 seconds. Shelby, why don't you take us out?
And I will say this, you and I know who it is. There's someone in our local community that did that very same thing. So one last thought, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Have a great week, everyone.
You've been listening to Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate. All of the fun and easy prepping information heard on this podcast can be found online at prepping2-0.com. You can also find out more about Glenn's books online at 299days.com and about Shelby's books online at agreatstate.com. Until next time, be smart, be safe, and be prepared.